Hey, this is Scott and Lindsay, and we're going to give you a kind of a guided tour on the open range on how to use the slides, how to put the jacks down, all the little things you need to know and processes and things. So you got a good experience and you know how to operate the RV the way it needs to. So we'll give you a quick tour and we'll get started. Thanks.
Hi, I was going to show you first how to use the RV lock if you're not familiar with this. It's very simple. You have a code and you can reset the code with the instructions. We left the box up here for you to have, and you just reset it this way. You type in your code and you hit the unlock button when you want it to unlock. And then when you want it to lock, reset the code again and hit the lock button. Now it's locked. You can also, I just unlocked it, but you can also lock it just by pressing the lock button. And again, this is a faceplate that will wear out probably over time with multiple uses, but you can always buy a new one from RV Lock for $10 in the future if you need to. Okay. This is the indoor control panel. Here you have all your switches and all of the information you need. So these four here control the four slides. This one begins in the master. This one, slide 3, controls the living room main slide. This one, slide 4, controls the bunk room slide. And slide 5 here controls the kitchen slide. They're marked in and out. You just have to push the button. If you want to push it out, you hold the out button down, or in, you press it down as well. Other things we have here on the control panel, the water pump. Turn it on, you hear it turning on right there. And it's ready to go. So on and off. Your electric water heater, turn that on. We always turn that on any place we get to as long as we have electric hookups. And then this one's for gas hookup. This will tell the propane to start making hot water using your propane. You can use both of these together if you have to have people take multiple showers back to back, and that'll heat it up faster for you. Okay, these are all lights, a hall light, outside lights as well. Your awning is up here, in and out. You just press the button, hold, and the awning will come out or in from outside. These are the lights for the awning as well. And then down here, you have your fantastic vent fan controls, and you just lower and raise it. First of all, open up the cover, and then you turn it on or off that way as well. Here you have your tank levels. Just press and it'll tell you, for instance, fresh water is about a third, somewhere between a third of a tank and empty full. That makes sense. Third of a tank or empty, typically between there. And then you can also tell your gray tanks, it'll tell you. Unfortunately, with these, when you're looking at the levels of the tanks, though, they're notorious for not being correct. So the one you can really define is the fresh tank. The grays you can kind of get a good estimate about, but they're not, the sensors on them just don't work very well in general in RVs to begin with. So they're not always very accurate.
Okay. The other couple things you want to know with these lights, DS is door side and ODS is opposite door side. So this is the floodlight that's on the door side of the RV, and this is the floodlight that's on the other side of the RV. This is kind of a toggle switch. It runs power out to the wet bay area if you wanted to use a macerator pump. So there are there's wires that are over there that are wrapped up. So if you ever wanted to connect to something like that, you could. But since you have a complexing toilet, you really don't need this anymore. This switch, I have no idea. There's a rear AC, front AC. I really don't know. It's always been in this front AC. All the ACs have worked. We've never messed with it. This one, inside microwave and outside microwave, they're on the same breaker. There used to be a microwave in the outside kitchen area. We took it out and put a TV in. So, but there is a power outlet out there that is operated off this outside microwave power switch. So, keep this in the inside microwave position. You always have power inside for your microwave. If you flip it to this one, it's going to power the outlet in the outside kitchen area. But there are two other outlets you can use. So just don't use the one that's out there, and I'll show you which one that is here in a bit. But just keep it on the inside microwave, and you're good to go there. I think so. As you push out the slides here, just do one at a time. It's a little bit easier on the batteries and the motors in general. So right now we're opening up the kitchen, which is done. And the next one would be the main living room slide. There we go. These are all cable-driven slides, and they have a gearbox that's up behind there. And they've all been replaced at one point, and if you ever start to hear a little popping or something like that, then it may be about time to replace that. We carry an extra gearbox just in case something ever went out. So that is actually available for you. It's included in the basement area and some of the extra parts and things that we had available. We're now opening the bunk room slide, and do this on the pull in and the pull out. We always open up these doors just to make sure things are sliding in and out correctly and there's no issues. Once it's fully closed, the door needs to be shut in order to pull in the main slide. Sort of the same thing with the master bedroom. Open up the door so you can kind of visually watch it go in and out. Once it's in its final position, you can close that door.
So when you bring the slides in, the slide, as you may have noticed, it's going to come very close to this area, so you want to make sure it's all clean here. And I always used to double check. I would actually take a yardstick and kind of run it underneath the slide as well as a broom to make sure there was no hidden surprises under there. If you have young kids, you might find a few toys, but it's also good just to clear the area and make sure there's nothing hiding. I will also clean under this one too. It's not as deep. There's a little stop right there that would prevent anything from going really deep behind the slide, but little things can catch here, so it's always good to clean here, as well as to check underneath here the island, because when it comes in, it's going to go underneath this part. This slide will go all the way underneath. So this is your faucet. It's great. It moves up and down side to side. But when you travel, we always recommend keeping this rubber band here because it will have a tendency to bounce itself open. And if you happen to leave your water pump on, water could drain. Or when you hook up to your next location and you haven't had a chance to check it yet, water can come right out. So we always recommend putting that there. And even when traveling with it open like this, in case water does drain, it can go straight down into the sink. Now, as for the fridge, here's how the fridge works. We've left it off currently. You can just turn it on. And if it says AC, it means it's using the electrical. So you can also change it to LP, which is the propane if you want to use gas. If you're boondocking or have run out of, if electricity goes out or something, you can just use propane. You also have a third option, which says AU AC. It flashes back and forth. The AU means automatic, and so it's automatically on using electric to keep it cool. But if electricity goes down or something happens, it can switch over to propane, automatically and do that if something were to happen to the electricity. And then to turn it off, just set it up. And of course you can set your temperature there as well. So you have two thermostats here, one here in the kitchen, the other in the bedroom. This one runs both the air conditioner, which is right here in the same room with you, the air conditioner, and it also is the only one that runs the furnace. So the one in the bedroom won't run the furnace, so if you need to turn on the heat, you're going to have to use this one. It's very simple to use. Turn it on. You can have it in fan mode where it just runs a fan and no cool or heat's coming out if you just want circulation. You can do cool and then set your temperature either up or down. And then you can hit to furnace, and again you can set your temperature up or down however you like it. And then you just need it to turn it off. Just cycle through. When you travel, leave it in off mode. Don't turn it on. Wait till you get your next destination before you turn it on. So this is the stove, the 3 burners, and it's very easy to use. What you have to do is push, they're all on off right now, but this middle one, we'll do this middle one for example. You hit light and then turn the spark. Very easy to use. If you've ever had a gas stove before, it's basically the same thing. and then to turn it off just that way as well. The oven is a little bit more interesting. It's in off mode, but you have to light the pilot light. So what you're going to do is press and hold to this pilot light, and then you reach under here to light the pilot light. Which I'm doing it backwards. Do it backwards the way I normally did it. Did I get it?
Yep.
All right. Then once it's lit, then you
hold for about 10 seconds.
Hold for about 10 seconds, and then once it's lit, then you can turn it to the temperature you want it at. All right, when you're traveling, there's a few things that you need to make sure are latched before you leave. There's a nice latch here on the shower doors. There's also a latch here on the sliding door. And then you also need to latch the mirror here. There's a latch on both sides, so both mirrors need to be sure and be latched into place. And of course, all the doors should be closed as well. What about it? Oh, and also the AC unit up here. That's the thermostat that controls the AC unit in the bedroom, and make sure that's turned off as well.
Yeah.
Now, when you're traveling and you bring this slide in, the bed's going to come all the way up against here, or very close to it. So these two drawers will stay in place when traveling, but this bottom one will not. So we found it best to just take it out very easily, and it travels on the bed very well. So this is the splendid 2100 XC combo washer dryer. The way to run this is very simple. Just hit the on button. Wait for it to turn on. Good. And then what you do is you're going to choose your cycle, what you want to do. Most of the time you'll go to number 7, and it tells you what your cycle is over here. For example, 7 is your regulars. That's all it is. And then you'll pick which cycle you want to do. And your wash temperature, do you want it cold or hot? And then dry time. So do you want it to dry for 100 minutes or less? It does take about, I would say, about 3 hours for it to go through one cycle of laundry for washing and drying. But once you decide what you want, then you just hit the start button and it'll start. If you want it to just wash only, then you just hit your minutes to off. If you want it to dry only, you hit it to number 5, because number 5 over here means cotton dry. And then you just cycle through to the amount of minutes that you want and hit start. Now, when you want to clean out the lint out of these things, you would go behind here. I would go behind here with some wipes and clean out all the lint that would trap up in there. There's a recommended wash cycle that you do that you can get some instructions on about how to periodically, once a month, if you're doing this for heavy use, that it flushes the drum out and gets all that lint out for you to collect in here. This is a place for you to pour your laundry detergent here. And then you can put your fabric softener over here as well. Or on that side. But that's where I pretty much just put laundry detergent there. All right, well, here's the composting toilet, the separate. The instructions for it we left for you in the dresser inside the closet. But it's very easy to use, simple to figure out. When you sit down, it's going to lift the flap open. If you need to go number 1, scoot forward a little bit. If you need to go number 2, use the back side, scoot back a little bit. But cleaning and maintenance of this thing is super easy. Basically what you do is you just lift it up here until you see these little yellow hooks come down, and it snaps it into place. What you'll just do, bag up, what I typically do is just bag up the poo, put it in another trash bag, and then you can clean out the bucket and the rest of the toilet with some disinfecting wipes is what I typically use and keep around. They're very easy and simple to use. let it air dry a bit, put in a new trash bag, set it back in, and then you just lift these little yellow hooks and then push it down, and it's very easy to clean all around this area too. And then I typically, when I changed it, we would change it about once a week, but they also recommend that you let you put some vinegar in it. That helps prevent the buildup of urea crystals developing over time in the piping. So I did it when we would change it. Like I said, it was about once a week. You can do it more often or less often, however you want to do it, but pouring down some vinegar down the drain every now and then is a good idea. Oh, also, after every time you use the bathroom, we also would flush. We'd get a special cup that we would hold to the side and fill it with water and just dump that down the toilet as well to flush it all down very easily.
Yeah, but only in the P-trap area at the front.
Yeah, you don't want any as minimal moisture in the back.
Okay, this is the LCI electronic leveling system. So things you need to know about this: to always retract the rear legs before you start trying to hook up or disconnect. So there, I think if you go up, it's a little faster. There. Auto retract rear. Can you see that? So auto retract rear, hit enter to begin. That will retract the rear legs. After you've hooked up to your vehicle, you want to use the auto retract all. That will retract your front legs. There's a manual mode where you can adjust, the front, the sides, the rear. You can do left and rear at the same time and just adjust the back left leg, front left leg, all that kind of stuff. When you are dropping the trailer off, so you have backed into your site and you're ready to start unhooking, you want to use this drop front jacks. So put your jack pads underneath the legs, hit enter on that. That'll drop the legs down until it touches. And once it's done that, then you can manually hold down this front button here to raise the legs up on the front side as part of your unhooking process. And there's all kinds of YouTube videos to explain, how to hook and unhook from a fifth wheel, so I'm not going to get into all that. Side to side, you're going to see how level you are from side to side, and then front to rear. We have found that if your side to side is off by more than 1 degree, that you may have a tendency of the tires coming off the ground when it's leveling. So we'd recommend you probably driving your trailer up on a block or two to get yourself closer to the zero as possible before you start doing the auto level process. So once you have unhooked from the vehicle and your truck's moved away from the trailer, you've kind of lowered the legs down a little bit in the back. We recommend not going all the way down to the blocks, kind of giving it about a 3-inch buffer, so it has some room to kind of level itself. Once you've done that, you hit this auto level button and it automatically levels the trailer for you. And when it's done, you hear a little beep sound and it'll say auto level success. So if you have any other questions, there is a whole guide here to kind of walk through that give you some of the different tips and tricks on this, or you can check out other videos online. I say maybe one other thing I can think of is when you're getting ready to hook up and you want to raise the trailer up to the level you were at when you dropped the trailer off. First, retract the rear legs. And then 2, you can hit this left and right button at the same time. This is in the instructions down below. And that will automatically move the trailer up to the position that you dropped the trailer off to begin with, which is pretty cool. Before you start doing anything with the jack legs, we need to talk about the strong arm jacks to make sure that you've got those loosened up. Okay, so these are the strong arm jacks, and there are, I don't know how many of them, but there's 6 of them, I think. So this loosens them up, so kind of give it a jiggle. I personally like to keep these when it's open and loose. I point them in line, so I kind of visually know that they're open. And if you're tightening them up, they're usually kind of in that type of position. So just to kind of make sure that you keep things loose, because if things locked up and you're starting to try to move the jack legs, it's going to put a lot of extra tension on it and may burn out the motor. So make sure that you get this loosened up on all legs before you try to move the jack legs. Okay, this is your wet bay area. Not too much to know here. I mean, it's not all that difficult. This is your fresh water connection. I would recommend probably putting some sort of a metal valve, cutoff valve on it to kind of save those plastic threads. This one is your black tank flush, but you've got a composting toilet, so you never need that again. Black tank drain, gray tank drain, and this is your main gray that works for the shower and the washer dryer connection, the bathroom in general. There's one more drain that is, you can see down here underneath the slide. That one is the drain pool for the kitchen area. A little bit harder to get to, but not too bad. Last thing you probably need to know is just kind of these connections. You point these arrows on these things in the direction of what you need to do. So if you need to fill the tank, you turn them all like that to match that pattern. If you're using the water pump or you're using city water, which is where you're probably going to be at most of the time, you use that type of configuration. So you just match it up. Winterization, if you ever needed to, if you ever need to bypass a hot water heater, you just go to that configuration. One other maybe little trick, by the way, these are the wires I was talking about that you could use for the macerator if you ever wanted to. If you ever wanted to pump water into your tanks without a city water connection, so maybe you have water in a bladder, this is a little more advanced for boondocking. We've configured this to pull water into the fresh water tank using the onboard water pump. So make sure this valve gets opened when you're trying to pull it on. Turn the pump on inside to make sure you're in like tank fill mode. And the pump will kick on and suck the water out of the bladder and put it straight into the tanks. But otherwise, this needs to be closed off at all times. Otherwise, it'll try and suck air in. It'll put a lot of air in your line. So I think that's about it for the wet bay. All right, so it's kind of hard for us to see with this slide out right now. But if you ever needed to dump the fresh water, the pool for it is between the tires over here on, I guess, like the driver's side of the trailer. So you just have to reach in behind there, and there's like a white pull valve that you can pull, and it'll drain the water out between the tires. There's a little extra extension pole if you want it. It's in on a rack in the bay in the front, and that's actually intended for you to be able to pull back in there and pull it out. But I've never really ever used it, but that is what that's for if you ever find that. If you want. There is an extra set of sewer hoses in here, so you can pull those out of the bumper. There's a little cap that you can pull off, and there's 2 sewer hoses connected inside there, and you just pull them out. So in the outside kitchen, it's locked right now, so we're not going to open it up. But there is a sink that's in there that you can, the fresh water is run to it, hot and water, but the drain is not drained to the gray tank. It just drains here. So there's a little bit of the reservoir in there. So if you ever want to drain this out, you just unscrew this cap, and any water that you had from that sink will actually just pour out on the ground in front of you. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot else that you probably need to know. Well, actually, I take that back. If you want to use the 2-burner grill that's in there, there's a propane line that's tucked in behind the grill. And you would pull that line out, and there's a quick connect right here that you would plug it into, and then there's a little turn valve here that turns the propane on and off. So once you get it plugged in there, make sure you put it to the on position. That will run propane to that burner. All right, so for internet on the road, a lot of what people use are like hotspots for LTE service. So think Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, things like that. So you get like those mobile jet packs, and on those mobile jet packs, if depending on which one you get, it may have external antenna ports on it. And if it does, then this is a directional exterior antenna that you can plug into those ports. So I usually kind of leave this bottom one alone for the most part, but the top two you can extend up, and this pole will go up about another 20 feet above the rig. And from here, you can kind of turn it. So you can kind of see it turning at the top. So if you need to change the direction of where you're trying to point that to, you just turn it around. And this is a coaxial cable. I've got kind of bunched up here. But the overall, and if you actually want to extend it, then you need to release this clip and let this come out. But we kind of bundle it up like this for travel day. This line of coax runs underneath the rig all the way to the front up here to the master bedroom area. And you should see it is one of these cables here. I believe it's this one right here. So this one's coming up, and it's where it's going up, and it's going up into the floorboard of the master bedroom, and it actually comes out underneath the dresser in the master bedroom. So underneath the dresser, there's some bundled up coaxial cable. So the next step is, if you do have a hotspot that you want to use for this, you need to get a coaxial to an SMA or an N-type connector, depending on what your setup is for your hotspot. So you screw that in, and then you can plug that directly into your hotspot, and you'll have great fast internet. Okay, you have 4 propane tanks, 2 on each side. This is a handy little system that kind of keeps these things in place. These tanks, the way that they're cut out here, makes this setup possible. So do not take these tanks to go and exchange them at Walmart, because the other set that you get from Walmart probably will not connect in here the way they're supposed to. You'll be able to run propane off of it, but you're not be able to get this system back in that holds these in place. This is I don't know what they call it, like a smart regulator or an automatic switchover regulator. That's probably the right phrase. You can actually turn both tanks on, leave them both open, and wherever you point this arrow to is the tank that it'll pull from first. Once it's pulled from and it's emptied this one out, then it automatically will switch over and start pulling from this tank. So as long as you leave them both open, that part will work. We typically kind of ran the outsides first, and when they emptied, we went and got them filled back up, and then it started running on the inside ones, and then just swap them back around. Okay, so one other part. This is how you loosen it up. This is like a whole wing nut. This thing comes off. That regulator slides on and off. You loosen these on each side. Make sure you've closed your valves off before you try to open this up. But you put that back in, and there's little slits that you can see on this silver bar that the tanks kind of just rest into, so it clamps down on it, and then you just kind of tighten this wing nut up on top, and that just kind of clamps these tanks down into place so they don't fall over while you're traveling. So my preference is you probably run this on one tank or the other with the auto changeover, but if you ever wanted to, for whatever reason, pull from both tanks at the same time, you can push it down to the middle, and in the middle setting, it'll pull from this tank and this tank equally at the same time. All right, so the solar setup, if you kind of study the wires, you can kind of figure out where things are connected and how the power flows. And I'm not probably going to get in a ton of detail on how everything is wired up here, but things you probably need to know. There's 2 batteries in here right now. They're both 12-volt batteries each. Because this is actually a 24-volt system, you need to add in 24-volt increments for the battery. So that means you're going to have to add 2 batteries at a time to equal 24 volts. So this is 24. You can add 2 more and wire those 2 together, and then wire those 2 to these 2. And that will make it still a 24-volt system, but you've increased your battery supply. Cutoff valves. This shuts off the power to the batteries just by turning it like that to the off position. This cutoff valve here cuts off the solar panels going into the charge controller, so it's currently on. So you switch it up to the off position, and that'll cut the power off coming in from the solar. There's a bunch of fuse bars in here just to kind of regulate power to make sure that nothing, you don't get backfed or anything like that. So this is one that runs for the batteries. It's a bigger fuse because it's needed. There's another fuse here that's kind of the coach or, the RV's fuse box. Lower wattage because we're kind of moving down to 12 volts really around this point, so it doesn't need as heavy duty of a fuse. This is a battery protect. It just kind of checks the flow regulation of the power to make sure you got good clean power rolling through. This is your positive bus bar. So all your positive wires run to this. And subsequently over here on the left is your negative bus bar. So this is all your negative runs to this particular one. The other components that we have up here across the top bar area, this is the Orion. This Orion unit converts your 24 volt to 12 volt power for your rig to use. The RV is not a 24 volt system. It is a 12 volt system. So this Orion takes this whole 24 volt setup and downgrades it to 12 before it gets into, your lights and all that kind of stuff that run in there. This unit is a smart solar charge controller. So it's an MPPT version, 100 amps, 50 volts. And so you're running your battery cables into this side where it says battery positive, negative, and PV is your solar panels. This is the Venus GX. This is kind of like makes the system kind of smart and allows you to be able to access your system from the web, from your phone. Even when you're out to dinner, you can get in and see what the charge is on your batteries and all that kind of stuff. When you're local, you can use this system, which is the BMV 712. And this will tell you what your battery voltage is, your current charge that you have on the batteries, and you're currently at 100% infinite supply. And there's also a battery temperature monitor that runs down in to this particular connection down here. So this one is your Smart Sense temperature controller battery sensor cable. It connects to the positive side. All right, last bit is the Multi-Plus, and I'll take a few minutes on this. The Multi-Plus, it's a 3,000 watt inverter, 70 amp. The inverter is not currently running because we're plugged into shore power, which is like RV connection. The mains are on, so power is running. The batteries are in float mode right now. If the batteries were less than 100%, the light would go into bulk because it's bulk charging. It's currently on. We leave it on all the time. The middle, if you go to middle, that's off. If you go to the bottom, that's charge only. So you just put it back in the on mode. You'll see all this stuff kind of power back up here in a second. And you do have a couple warning lights here. So if you have problems with temperature or low battery or overload issues, you'll get alerts. The system will shut it down to protect itself. Beyond that, there are mobile apps that will allow you to connect to utilizing and controlling this system, your solar system, and the battery monitor tools. Really sophisticated. All this stuff communicates with each other, so it's great. One of the cool things about this particular unit is it's a hybrid inverter charger system. So we have actually bypassed the converter that's on the unit, which reminds me I need to show you something on the breaker panel. But this one does the converting and charging. So when you're plugged into shore power, it will charge the batteries. When you're not, it also does the inverting. It'll take the power from the batteries and invert it to AC power for the rest of the rig to use. A cool feature on this is, let's say that you're at a friend's house or you got like a small generator that you're running, and it says you can only pull 15 amps or 10 amps. You can tell this system to only draw that much power from that particular connection. So if you have, say mooch stocking at a friend's house, they got a 15 amp, regular power cord plug. You can plug into that and tell this thing to only pull 15 amps or 12 amps so you don't pop their breaker. It will supplement the rest of the power needs that it has from your batteries and from your solar. So it'll kind of manage all that stuff for you. So really neat. Let me go show you that thing on the breaker real quick and explain what you need to do with that. This is your breaker panel down here. Push that right there to open it up. You'll notice there's one breaker that's turned off. That's your converter, okay? Leave that one turned off. Otherwise, because you've already got one through that Victron Multiplus system, and you don't want both of them running. If you actually had this one turned on, it could do something kind of bad to your batteries. It would actually probably charge the batteries from the batteries, and which would create like a feedback loop, and that could probably damage your batteries pretty bad. So leave that disabled, keep it turned off. The rest of the panel is just fine, and everything in here is really pretty well labeled for what you need to know. Water heater, microwave, fireplace, washer, dryer, the converter, bedroom AC, generic outlets, AC, the GFI outlet, and this one is for the outside kitchen, I believe. This is the back of the fridge, these two panels here. On this one, I've got it mounted up now, but this particular unit, we've replaced this once before, but if it gets wet, it could stop working or give you some malfunction issues. One thing that we notice is like when we're going through like a wash or getting these things washed, I might put like a garbage bag or something in here to kind of keep this from getting wet, and then take it out when we're done, turn the fridge off so it's not trying to pull from it. But I'm going to try to make sure you can keep that dry. Rain, that kind of stuff's not going to be an issue, but if you get like pressure washing where things are spraying up, that might give you some problems if that gets wet. But I think that's it. Otherwise, this thing's been working great. So this is the outside water heater area. We've got some screens that kind of keep wasp nests and things like that from getting into it. This is the furnace out vent as well. So hot water heater, in some RVs, there's an anode rod that goes into the tank that prevents things from just eating away at the tank. So it kind of gives it like food in a sense for the chemicals and materials to kind of like eat on, so it doesn't eat your tank away. This actually has an aluminum tank, so you don't have that issue. So the anode rod in this particular RV never needs to be replaced. So I think that's all you need to know on this. If you are storing it, obviously drain the water out and things like that out of the tank, especially if you're going into freezing temperatures. Okay, so that kind of concludes our maintenance overview check. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook or send us an email, give us a phone call, whatever you need, and we'll be more than happy to kind of help you out along the way. But we hope you have a fun time and happy journey. Thanks.